Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Monday night class with me, Matthew Brownstein, here at the Institute of Interpersonal Hypnotherapy, or honestly, from my home office. Yet we are on a hot education group, which houses the Institute of Interpersonal Hypnotherapy, Silent Light Publishers, the International Association. What is it saying? We're having trouble posting on LinkedIn right now. All right, hopefully everything else is streaming smooth. So anyway, please check us out if you want to learn more about everything we offer at instituteofhypnotherapy.com. We've been doing these classes since about 2012. I recently reinitiated them. And we're going to go deeper into more spiritual themes instead of just basic hypnotherapy. As a lot of you who might know my background, I'm a religious scholar, I'm a philosopher, I've lived in monasteries and spiritual communities and ashrams for about 5 years of my life. Yet since I was 19 years old, I've dedicated my whole life to studying these type of things. And tonight's topic is the Yoga Sutras, which has been very dear to me since college when I was studying Eastern mysticism at the University of Florida, and even out of the university. I mean, it's like all I did was study this stuff. But not only study it, but to dive deep into the teachings, to experience what this is all about. It all started for me, because any of you who know my journey know I talk about it at 19 years old. I had a profound oneness experience where everything became light, and it came out of nowhere. I didn't know what it was. I wasn't prepared for it. It wasn't scary for me per se, but it was so different than normal waking consciousness that I had to find out what had happened to me. And within about a year in my college studies, I changed my major philosophy and then religion. And when I came across the Yoga Sutras, I knew how profound it was, but at the same time, I didn't know how profound it was. When you're introduced to something, it sometimes takes years to appreciate it. When you pull it out, this text, out of all of the other religious spiritual literature, to me, it stands alone. I don't know of any text that's like this, that maps out the progression from wherever you're at in your meditative practice or your inner journey practice, right? And we do hypnotherapy in this school. So we're all about taking that inner journey. We often talk about the difference between meditation and hypnosis. And here tonight, we're going to be talking more about meditation. But those of you who are into hypnosis and the altered state will appreciate a roadmap that helps you to go deeper than what we get in classical hypnotherapy teachings. In classical hypnotherapy, we have states known as the somnambulistic state or the Esdale state, and they've mapped that out, right? We have some words that kind of describe just how deep a person is going. But that level of depth is honestly not that profound compared to what you can study in the Yoga Sutras. But I like hypnosis as a foundation for how much deeper you can go when you have teachings like the Yoga Sutras. So tonight, I will be introducing you to a lot of things, including some fun with my own journey when I lived in India. This man I actually met, and I'll tell you a little bit of the story now and then maybe talk more about it later. But it's the real deal. You know, this is me like hiking alone in the Himalayas and coming across it was like a temple built into the mountain, and there was nobody around. And I walked by them, I'm like, there's no way I'm walking in this place. There's just nobody there. I don't know if anybody, maybe there's a bear inside of this place. Like, who knows? It was way far out in the Himalayan National Park. And again, I'm just totally alone. I'm like, there's probably some great saint or holy person in here. I've got to go in and check this out. So I gathered some fruit to make as an offering, and I walked in, and there he was, sitting there with his nice yogi pot belly and his sacred thread that the Brahmins of India wear in his hair. So he's considered a Hindu sannyasi or holy person. And my Hindi is very poor. My Sanskrit is equally as poor. And he didn't speak English, but you can see the symbol for Om on the back wall. And he asked some questions, like the best we could communicate. But it was very sweet. And either way, he knew, and I knew, like, we're on the path. And we share something that anybody who goes deep into their own consciousness knows and shares and gets to experience. So there's another picture I have of him later. But part of this, I hope you'll enjoy, is some of my personal journey. Not just the text itself, but my relationship to the text. So tonight we'll cover these themes, and depending on how it goes, a bit more. I want to start with a little meditation once I get to the right point here, and then we'll close with a meditation as well. So I hope you'll consider tonight a meditation, a break from your traditional life. So if Monday nights are a great way to start your week, if your day didn't start right, in A Course in Miracles, it says you could always start over. Even if it's 7 o'clock at night Eastern time, you can still take a breath and ask yourself, what are the deep mystics, what are the yogis experiencing inside? And what are some of the key texts they've used? What is this thing called the Yoga Sutras? So we'll talk about what are the Yoga Sutras, and then actually what is a sutra? What tradition does this arise out of? I've already given you some hints about India and the Hindu tradition. Why is the text so important? And this would be kind of my personal opinion, but if you've never studied it, I believe you're going to find it really important. There's, again, no other roadmap that I've found about how the inner journey goes. In Sanskrit, we have words that we don't have in English. So if I just say something like close your eyes and focus on your own awareness and your own consciousness, that means something. I have the word consciousness, I have the word awareness, but I don't have all of these Sanskrit words that have been used for thousands of years to map out that inner journey. So tonight we'll share in that a little bit. And sometimes this can be very overly heavy with the Sanskrit terms. I'll use some as indicators just to say, okay, we're talking about this idea now, but then we'll dive into the idea and not lose you in too much of the Sanskrit. But when I lived in India and in my religious studies, I seriously dove into studying the Devanagari script, which is the letters you see in Hindi and Sanskrit. So while Sanskrit is essentially a dead language, Hindi is still spoken, and the letters aren't all that different. So essentially, when you're studying Hindi, you're also studying Sanskrit. But more importantly than the letters, there's the transliteration of the words themselves into English, and the spelling can be important because every word essentially is a sacred vibration. You can use, for those of you who understand hypnosis, you can use these words as anchors, or you might call them trigger phrases, for different states of meditation. So for instance, we have a state we'll talk about tonight called Samadhi. It's one of the big states, like the big S word of yogic practice. A lot of you have heard the term, but there's stages of Samadhi. And if you want to move through the stages, if you're conditioned to each stage, all you need to do is have a certain word. So if I just think to myself, Vichar Samadhi, I know what that means, and I can enter that state. So tonight I want to actually teach more from that meditative state as I introduce you to some of these ideas. I'd like for us to all go into this together. So again, consider tonight a meditation, a set of teachings I hope you find valuable, teachings that relate to the field of hypnotherapy. And on that notion, that bullet point says, what is Vivek, what is Samadhi, and what is Kaivalya? So we'll be talking about those tonight in depth. And then some of you, of course, will like the topic of chapter 3 of the Yoga Sutras, Vibhuti, which are also known as siddhis or yogic powers. A lot of people get into the spiritual path wanting to have really interesting spiritual experiences or special powers like clairvoyance or the ability to read people's minds. And a lot of what's in chapter 3 of the Yoga Sutras acknowledges those things are not the goal, right? The goal is the highest realization of the self, the highest state of liberation or Kaivalya. The idea there, Kaivalya or Kaivalya Avastha, is the meditative experience, which is a very advanced state to achieve, of self alone. So that all you're experiencing in your moment, like in this moment, is absolute bliss consciousness. The more you can get into that, it becomes a habit. And then more and more, you're just living in these yogic states of peace and love and oneness, and what's called in Sanskrit Gyan, in the West often spelled J-N-A-A, which makes you want to say Janana. But the proper transliteration, pronunciation is Gyan, G-Y-A-N. So I'll introduce you to my primary teacher in India, and he was very big on transliteration, that we say words properly. I went there, I'm a yoga teacher, and I'll show you at least one picture of me in yoga tonight doing a fancy pose. And I went there in India, and I was actually doing hypnotherapy on people in the afternoons, and I was actually ended up teaching yoga. I never would have thought. But while I'm teaching yoga, I'm talking to the students about the bandhas. And then these people have lived in India for a while, so they're like, what do you mean bandhas? They're like, you mean the bund? I'm like, oh. So even though I'd studied this incredibly in detail in the West, words are just transliterated and translated poorly. And my teacher there, the teachers there, were very big on proper pronunciation. So anyway, we'll talk a little bit about the yogic powers tonight and how they develop, right? Like, how do we get these cool abilities. It's not about the abilities, it's about self-realization. But on the way, certain gifts or skills, you might call them, develop, which can be actually really helpful in a hypnotherapy practice. And then how can you learn more? So with all that said, keep plugging along into our journey tonight into India. To learn more, we have some upcoming workshops, just a little bit of housekeeping, telling what's going on in the Institute. Course in Miracles is coming up on August the 27th, and it's a full day workshop, so consider it like a spiritual retreat with me if you'd like to engage in that. It's kind of like coming to onlinemonastery.com and diving into some deep spiritual teaching. So I have a Yoga Sutras of Patanjali workshop coming up April 30th, 2022. If you miss it, you can simply go back to our website, and the recordings will be there as a CEU class that you can watch anytime you like. But you can attend live, and I'd love to have you there. We already have a nice group of people, so it's definitely happening, and anybody watching is more than welcome to attend. You don't have to be a hypnotherapist or a graduate of our school, and it'll benefit your meditation or hypnotherapy tremendously. I also have my Advanced Life Mastery course coming up on July the 30th, where we go much deeper than just spirituality. We talk about success in every aspect of your life. So if you're not finding wonderful success in everything you're doing, then I highly encourage you to join that workshop. We kept the price low so anybody can attend. And all of these teachings, A Course in Miracles, Yoga Sutras, and the Life Mastery course itself will change your life. So if you haven't really absorbed all these teachings yet, it's a very simple, fun, easy, at-home way to get into it. All right, after that little bit of promotion, I also just want to always remind everybody, one of our other projects through Anahat Education Group is onlinemonastery.com. This is over 100 hours of free meditation training, 60 hours of videos, and then you have to practice meditation. So it's going to count for at least 40, but really more until you've done enough of the training to be able to be a certified teacher of the system. It's worthy of being called an online monastery. It's a lifetime practice. I still practice this type of meditation to this day. It blends perfectly with the Yoga Sutras. And again, I offer this completely free for anybody who's interested, onlinemonastery.com. And we're right now integrating into our school's curriculum as well, but it's still there on the web for free, and ideally always will be. All right, next for you guys to know about, our annual conference is coming up. It's open to the public, whether you're an IAIH member or graduate of our school, or just anybody who's interested in learning some really great things. You can go to interpersonalhypnotherapy.com, or there's going to be links for those of you who are here live to be able to, or on the screen right now, where you can check out the conference. It's 3 days of online experiential training. The topic is synthesis, where we're working to get all of what's good inside of us integrated into something higher. And then for all the conference presenters and the participants to integrate all of our knowledge into something higher. When you get this subconscious program for accelerated synthesis, your brain starts integrating ideas that you may never have realized before. It's like, wow, I'm an artist, I'm a poet, I'm a hypnotherapist, I'm a mother. Once all that comes together, it creates something bigger. So it's really meant to awaken you to your fullest potential, this conference. Unfortunately, we can't do it in person this year, or we're not going to do it in person this year. Yet the intention is to keep our conferences alive. They've been very successful in the past, and then to get it live eventually in the future for you guys. Okay, also just feel free to check out instituteofhypnotherapy.com. We have our next class starting on April the 26th of 2022. You can take the training online or in locations that we have, primarily in Florida, but anywhere you're at, you can take that training with us online. Okay, let's dive in. I'm going to take a little meditation, so I invite you to close your eyes, yet I'll just introduce you to this picture. So that's me over to the right, probably the youngest guy amongst a whole bunch of older hippies who have been living in the International Meditation Institute, is where I lived in the Himalayas. And Swami Sham was the primary teacher and guru there. You'll see some pictures of him later. He actually did a beautiful translation and transliteration of the Yoga Sutras themselves, which I'll introduce you to as well. And I recommend that book amongst almost anything else out there. And I'll talk a little bit about why as we go into it. But for now, that's my invitation picture for you to go to India with me. So if you'd like to close your eyes, let's embrace the Yoga Sutras as deep as we can go with it. So if your eyes are closed, this is your invitation to release the past, to focus on your breathing in the here and now, and to get quiet. The yogis talk about separating the real from the unreal, the external from the internal, and truth from illusion. Everything outside of yourself, you can just let fade away, float away, the changing external world of forms. Keep letting it go. If it moves, if it vibrates, if it changes, let it go. And turn your attention inwards. Do what you do that helps you to take that inner journey. No matter what you do, you're always invited to be in the present moment. Breathe, because your body and your breath are right here now. Letting go of the past, letting go of the future, letting go of the external world, feeling how good it feels to close your eyes and to turn within. And we'll begin with some simple guided imagery, yet we'll go much deeper than that tonight. So for now, imagine that you find yourself in beautiful flat plains, meadows, surrounded by mountains, a beautiful day out in nature. You find yourself in a beautiful field. Notice the foothills of the mountains and the trees. Take your time to make this imagery your focal point so that nothing else matters but following my voice and going deep within, as if you're standing in a meadow. Look at mighty Himalayan peaks in the distance. Sense the wind blowing through the foothills and those plains, and then you begin your journey as you're walking. Let every step take you deeper, and to get a sense of a journey which is ancient, sacred, timeless, and a path that's been traveled by many seekers before we got here. And as you walk, you can notice the sun setting, so you quicken your pace and time becomes distorted, distance becomes distorted, and you find yourself walking up trails, getting deeper into Himalayan forests, crossing bridges that go over rivers, climbing up that stone staircase there, meandering and finding your way into the higher peaks. And imagining there in the distance, there's a cave. And as you mindfully and consciously walk into the cave, you do notice indeed a holy person, a saint, a sadhu, a mystic, whatever you would call this one sitting there. You bow, acknowledging that you're honored to be here and you respect the presence of sitting there with this teacher. This teacher bows back to you and you both sit. You breathe together. And you're being instructed now without words. As you sit in front of this teacher, you're naturally guided to where the Yoga Sutras guide us. Because you're so deep in the mountains, so high up in a cave, the world below doesn't mean anything anymore. Your eyes are closed and it's so quiet. There's no sound. There's nothing to taste. There's nothing to smell or touch. It's almost like a sensory deprivation tank. Yet the only thing you notice is that you're still aware. It's as if your body starts to dissolve. And your heart, your emotions, your mind, all dissolving, and yet somehow you're still there. And as I slowly count from 10 down to 1, let yourself go deeper into the silence as I offer ideas from the Yoga Sutras that help you to move from the unreal to the real, from the manifest to the unmanifest. from the objects of consciousness to the pure consciousness itself that you are. So number 10, keep relaxing your body. Keep letting go and direct your attention into that space of pure silence and conscious awareness. You know how to go there. It's very natural and easy and intuitive. On number 9, it's not your body or the things of the world you're focusing on. You're going deeper than your own thoughts. On number 8, move behind your thoughts. Imagine sitting in this cave, and because of the presence of the one you're meditating in front of, you're automatically sucked into this vortex of pure conscious awareness. There's no depth. There's no limit to how deep it goes. From 7, let your sense of personal self melt away. Your sense of ego dissolving, but you're still there. From 6, let go, yet you stay very conscious. And as you go deeper within, a sense of bliss begins to develop. Just imagine it. You're overwhelmed with this inner ecstasy, this inner glow. Even sound, the sound of Om, starts to vibrate in your own consciousness. You sense this divine sweetness, and these inner senses start to open up as subtle inner lights or scents or sounds appear. But you don't even care about those. And number 4, you keep your consciousness focused on pure awareness. The sense that you exist, I am. Go deeper into I am. You're not caught up in the phenomena, no matter how good it is. Just go deeper into the self. On 3, capital S, self. Focusing on one's true identity. Focusing on that which exists, without space, without time, without body or mind. No name, no form, no color, no sight, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch. Just pure consciousness, pure existence, and pure bliss. And 3, you even forget about the one who's guiding you, because all you care about is the inner experience of peace, bliss, and oneness with your source, right here, now, beyond time and space. Practice being in the moment, yet so deep within. On number 2, and as all imagination drops away, nothing to create in your mind, nothing to think about. Think about that which is beyond thought. On 2, dissolve yourself into the self of pure conscious awareness. On number 1. 1. Deeper into oneness. Allow the peace of your own soul to become ever present. And you meditate on that peace. Find the silence within and go there. It's not a doing, it's a being. It's not a creating, it's a surrendering to what already is. It's an allowing and an accepting of what is, to be what is. No resistance, no struggle, no trying, no attainment, just being. It's always there. And it's the essence of all that the Yoga Sutras is about, the journey into the immortal, blissful consciousness of your very own self. Now, in a moment, I'll just be snapping my fingers since I don't have a nice bell in front of me, It's going to be the invitation for you to open your eyes. Yet I'd like you to consider that nothing will change. All that's going to change is your eyes will open. You don't come out of meditation. It's not like coming out of hypnosis. You get very conscious, very quiet, very clear, very peaceful, very blissful. And you simply live your life from that space. So when you're ready, when you hear my fingers snap, you're welcome to open your eyes, yet stay in that peaceful, inner, beautiful state of consciousness. And I know that's a little bit abrupt, and yet at the same time, I didn't have a gentle bell to ring for you. So welcome back, everybody. Let's start to talk about what are the Yoga Sutras, and then towards the end, we'll take another dive into the meditative state that the Yoga Sutras points us to. So the text itself is written by a sage named Patanjali. Nobody knows who he is, and the story is pure mythology, so we won't really go into it. Even though it's interesting to read, you can probably find it on Wikipedia or something. Essentially, we have a bunch of sutras, verses of wisdom, that explain something very important, something very powerful. There are a lot of spiritual traditions, right? We have Christianity and Judaism, and all of these paths have what they call their mystical branches. We have Kabbalah in Judaism, Christian mysticism in Christianity, in Islam we have Sufism, in Buddhism we have Zen and other schools of thought that are much more meditative, even though Buddhism itself is essentially just a meditative path in so many ways. In Hinduism, we have many mystical branches that guide us inwards. So knowing that there's religion, which is considered usually more exoteric, meaning it's concerned with rituals and buildings and social norms, and usually, well, for better or worse, we have exoteric religion, right? We also have exoteric religion, esoteric religion, which is another way of basically saying the inner journey, the path of the mystic, the path of someone who wants to have self-realization in this lifetime. If we're to use more theistic terms, we would say a mystic or a yogi is a soul who wants to know God. Now, I'm not going to overuse the word God tonight at all. And fortunately, in Sanskrit, we have a lot of words for that, much better than just the letter G-O-D. Yoga is a science of the soul. It acknowledges that there's a hypothesis, right? You can be self-realized in this lifetime. You can be free. You can be enlightened. You can be liberated. You can have so much power to create whatever you want because you're in touch with your source and you're in harmony with your source. That's the hypothesis, right? Our theory is maybe anybody, could have that. Then you have to do an experiment in scientific method. The experiment needs to be duplicated by anybody so anybody can prove does it work or not. If you do the experiment of Yoga Darshan, so Darshan, you can call the text of the Yoga Sutras Yoga Darshan, and we'll talk about what the word yoga means a little bit more soon, but the word darshan is a word for vision. Often you say you're going to have your guru's darshan, which means you're going to sit down with your guru or your teacher and kind of see your teacher. But like the meditation I just guided us alluded to, you don't need to see a physical teacher. The teacher is only there to point you to the goal of the yogic path, right? And that goal is inside of you as you, and you're actually that being now, right? So it's not like other goals. The Yoga Sutras aren't teaching you how to make more money or how to get more cars or how to lose weight, right? There's a lot of teachings for how to improve your external reality. But these teachings are a direct pointing to the soul, to the self. And because it's an experiment that anybody can do, if you do the practice taught in Yoga Darshan or in the Yoga Sutras, then you can get verifiable results. That's considered like the science of the soul. So a yogi is somebody who simply practices spiritual discipline known as sadhana. That person's usually called a sadhak, or somebody who just does a lot of spiritual practice, who essentially meditates a lot. I think everybody in this picture on the screen would be considered a sadhak. So with that said, that's a brief introduction to the Yoga Sutras. So what is the sutra itself? Here, the book I'd recommend is Patanjali Yoga Darshan, right? So Patanjali is the sage who wrote the text, even though we have no idea who that person really is. So you just take the text for what it is. And then Yoga Darshan again. Yoga is simply stated oneness. Often in the West, you hear the word yoga or yoga translated as unity or union. That you're going to yoke something, that you're going to take one thing and another thing and bring them together. Like the soul will be brought back to God. The problem with that model is it says that you're not one with your source right now. You can't not be one with your source, right? Source is everywhere. Infinite bliss consciousness is everywhere. The yogis teach that infinite bliss is right here now, that the absolute sweetness and love and joy of your own consciousness is right here now. Why are we not tapping into that? Well, we just really aren't trained to do so. Right? Nobody gave us a roadmap in high school or college necessarily that said, unless you were like me, a religion major, that actually said, there's a way to find the peace, bliss, love, joy, and oneness experience in your own soul. So Swami Sham is a very influential teacher of mine. He's no longer in a body. He passed away a few years ago. But I got to be there living with him in India. And that's a picture of when I first met him. I was still 20, 30, I don't know, about 30 years old or something. And so he would consider himself at the time a guru, but the word just means gu is from darkness and ru is to light. So guru is essentially anyone who leads you from darkness to light. Yet in the West, the guru model doesn't really hold up very well. So just being a teacher, like any of us could do, can be beneficial for humanity. I think there's very few true gurus, but Swamiji here, Swami Sham, he would just wear that clothing just to play the part, even though he knew he was just playing a part, but it served a purpose for sure. He was a beautiful being. When you hug someone like this, someone who's done yoga their whole life, who's reached the goals of the highest attainments, that first hug, and I've hugged other saints before too like that, there's nobody home. The sweetness and the purity is just so awe-inspiring. What would happen in this meditation hall that you're seeing there, go back here so you can see me a little bit more. I'd be sitting there meditating for like hours a day, but before we would have satsang, when everybody would come together and he would teach and we would sing and meditate together. And he was so funny. He would always tell really funny jokes and whatnot. So people like this, they really are just hysterical at times. When I was sitting meditating, I can feel, this is in the Himalayas, it's at an ashram, so you're already at a pretty high vibration. But before he would even arrive in the ashram, in the meditation hall, you could feel the energy change when he was just walking. Like my eyes were closed, but all I would just feel bliss, more bliss, more bliss, more bliss, more light, more joy, more love. It's like, oh my God. And then you open your eyes and like he's right there. So there's something about beings who are functioning at this level. While I was in India studying the Yoga Sutras real seriously with Swami Sham, but really predominantly with his great teachers, he created masters who lived there, and I could just go to their house every day and just study with these people for hours. During that time, I was doing a lot of, in the afternoons, hypnotherapy on people once they found out that I actually was able to heal people. So my afternoons in India were spent healing people in the Himalayas. And when I realized, long story short, that I really knew what I was doing in the healing, using the mind to heal the body, I ended up writing my book, The Sutras on Healing and Enlightenment. So what is a sutra? The word translates as I think the word it translates best as thread, like on a pearl necklace, right? There's a thread that connects each pearl. Each pearl is a verse of wisdom, an aphorism, and the sutras is essentially the line that's connecting them all. So when I wrote my book, The Sutras on Healing and Enlightenment, it wasn't just about the enlightenment process as found in the Yoga Sutras. It was found in the deeper spiritual teachings that I've studied my whole adult life that relate to I pull from Chinese medicine, which I have a strong background in, and homeopathy, and Christian Science has been very influential, A Course in Miracles. So there's healing and enlightenment. And my book talks about that healing and enlightenment are synonymous terms. So if you're helping your clients to, quote, heal, a word you have to be careful with sometimes in your advertising, but generally, using that word here, if we just say, if you help a client to heal their mind and heal their body, you've done something amazing. Yet if you're enlightened to who you truly are, and you help your client to be enlightened to who they truly are, then healing and enlightenment have both occurred. So what I learned a lot in India was about enlightenment, but I didn't really learn about healing there. And I found most people who meditate at the ashram were just as mentally or physically uncomfortable at times than anybody else, because while you can go into the deepest meditative states, the subconscious mind, your emotional heart, the part of your being that carries all your pain and blockages, that does get healed eventually with meditative teachings, but Not really, in a sense. And I got to experience that directly through many different spiritual communities, and being a healer in these communities, realizing, if I go into a great yogi subconscious mind, quite often that person has the same blocks as anybody else. And therefore, there's a place for both teachings. Absolutely. Okay, with that said, that's just an instruction in the sutras, my book, and then Swamiji's book. You want to be careful with other transliterations of the Yoga Sutras, because like when I was in college, for instance, the word yoga or yoga could be translated as discipline. And you see this in translations of the Hindu text of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is the Lord of discipline. Now, if that's the best word we can have for yoga, is to say it's just discipline, like a yogic practice, then we really miss the point completely. There's also other translations of a word we'll look at tonight called narod, which when poorly translated can give you the worst idea of how to meditate. And it's like one of the key words in the Yoga Sutras, and you transliterate it or translate it wrong, and you get people simply doing the wrong technique. So when I got to India, I met Swamiji, and you have to sit in front of the whole community and kind of introduce yourself and talk. And I humbly said, I believe I have found the self, Swamiji. I humbly feel like I've made progress, but I'm here to deepen and understand refine my understanding of all of this. And he said to the audience, oh, yes, in his beautiful Hindi accent, oh, yes, he knows the self, and it's wonderful. He's here to deepen his understanding. So it was really wonderful to get to experience such a being. And a lot of my mystical experiences, I didn't understand until I went to India and actually got to talk to people about these topics. People have been on the path for 30 years and, studying the Himalayas. They were able to say, oh, that's called Virat Swarup. That's a cosmic vision, right? That's called Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That's what you experience when you go into that. So we have our workshop coming up again at the end of the month, where we're going to spend a whole day diving into these topics. So please definitely check that out at instituteofhypnotherapy.com. With that said, let's move on. All right, so there's a picture of me in, what is that pose called? Ashtang Bakrasana. Ashtang is a Sanskrit word for the 8 limbs, and you find the teachings of the 8 limbs of yogic practice in the Yoga Sutras. Let me touch on those perhaps a little bit tonight. But anyway, I can probably still do that today, but whatever, we're not here for that. So what does this tradition arise out of? Again, primarily India. How old is the text? It was written down, I believe about 200 AD. So it's close to 2,000 years old. But the truth is the teachings existed long before. Buddha lived in India, and he was a Hindu reformer. He went through all of these teachings. He learned everything that the yogis know, and yet he felt that there was still more. And I do personally, after studying religion and these philosophies for so many years now, I believe there's a lot of truth to that what Buddha did was refine the teachings, and one of the most refined versions of that, if you're interested, is Zen Buddhism. It just says, what is the essence of this meditative practice? And how can we take away all the fluff, the gods, the goddesses, the mythology, even fancy ideas of the soul. Like, so in Hinduism, they talk about Atma, which is a word for the soul. Buddha talked about Anatma, meaning not soul or not self. And they can be very hard concepts to reconcile. However, as you go deep enough, these words and philosophies start to drop away, and the inner experience is all that matters. Buddha experienced all of this, and Buddha lived about 600 years, or maybe 700 years before, something like that, before the Yoga Sutras were even physically written down. But the teachings were there in India. They were amongst a community of monastics and those who lived at ashrams. Buddha had monasteries after he was enlightened, and people essentially just sat there meditating, and they're using this roadmap for the journey. So it doesn't matter what tradition you are in, the Yoga Sutras will prove to be a roadmap so to where you're going. So if you're a Christian, the Yoga Sutras will lead you deeper into, and this is again if you're a Christian mystic who wants to have the direct experience of the divine within yourself, the Yoga Sutras are the roadmap pointing to the divine within you. So it doesn't matter if you're a Jewish mystic or a Hindu mystic or a Buddhist mystic, meaning somebody who wants to do practices to find their own soul. And they always teach the soul or the self, your true self, is one with God now. You are one with your source now. So by finding you in now, you're essentially finding self-realization, God-realization now. And even though that sounds easy, usually when you start these kind of practices, it takes a good 10 years before like true enlightenment phases start to kick in. So even though people say, oh, that's a really long time, in Zen, they say, if the student says, Master, I don't have 10 years, well, then it'll take you 20 years. I don't have 20 years, well, then it'll take you 30 years. And so what do they say in the Tao Te Ching? 1,000-mile journey begins with the first step. But wherever you're at on the path, if you study the Yoga Sutras, you can go much deeper into understanding the inner journey. And again, it's way deeper than the hypnotherapy teachings about what it means to go inside. But as a hypnotherapist, to be rooted and centered in this space of knowledge and wisdom and clarity and peace and bliss and the powers that come from that, which we can talk about tonight, you are able to help your clients in the most remarkable ways. Literally, and like I would say almost when you study the Yoga Sutras, the powers that develop are literally superhuman. So I don't claim much in that. And again, that's not the essence of the teaching. You don't have to focus on the powers. You just focus on the deeper meditative state, and everything else unfolds out of that. That's a little bit about the background of these. This is a picture of me in Manali, India, with a bunch of Tibetan monks. And it was cool to walk into their monastery and see the old scrolls and parchment, or they have them in like slats of wood, like really ancient. And this is a monastery where the Tibetans were exiled from China, right? And a lot of them went to India, and a lot of them went up here to Manali. So I was really honored to get to go here. It's not that far, about 12 hours from Dharamsala, where the Dalai Lama took refuge. Okay, so why is the text so important? Because of all the different, including things like the Bhagavad Gita or other sacred Hindu texts, they don't actually just have the roadmap for how to go into the deep meditative states. And again, if you study other traditions like Kundalini Yoga, for instance, what you find in the refined modern version of Sikhism, they have all these teachings in the inner path, but there's just a general outline, essentially, of what the inner journey looks like that's true for anybody in any tradition. And again, after studying so much of what's out there, this seems to be one of the most refined versions of explaining that inner roadmap. Okay. So here's another image of going into that cave with that sannyas, that Hindu holy person, and the hand up is a gesture of, blessing. So what are some of the major teachings that come from these kind of guys? In verse 2 of the Yoga Sutras, here in Sanskrit and then transliterated for you, is yoga or yogash chit vritti nirodha. Now, how you say the Sanskrit is a real process to get it just right. But anyway, we can dissect 4 major words here: yog, chit, vritti, and narod. So yog, chit, vritti, narod, or yoga, chit, vritti, nirodha. If you study most of the Western translations of this, it's going to say the state of yoga arises when the thoughts of your mind are suppressed. The problem with the word suppression, when you relate it to the word narod, is that people start to think then the way to get into deep meditation is I have to stop my mind. I have to suppress my thoughts. Fighting with yourself, suppressing your emotions, trying to make those thoughts in your head stop doing what they're doing, that song that's always in your head, you try to stop that thing from singing. You're using force in a way that yogis never intended. The goal of yogic practice is not to suppress your thoughts. The word narod can be, there's no good English word for it, but if we use the word transcend, we might be acknowledging a little bit better. So imagine that you're drowning in a pond of water, and as you kick and splash, you're making more waves, you're stirring up more dirt, and you can't see any clarity in there. How do you stop those waves? Are you going to be in there using your hands to manipulate them? Or what if you just climbed out of the pond? The word narod, I believe, is kind of best explained by saying climb out of the pond of your mind and observe your mind so it'll settle down on its own. But more importantly than just observing your mind, so if you can imagine, like, let's say sitting here in your third eye region, your forehead, imagine your mind is kind of down here, right in your head. You can sit in what the yogis would call the seat of the soul, or the knower, or the seat of witness consciousness, and you can look down. So another word for narod, or I think I gave you the word, is to transcend. to rise above your thoughts, but not just so that you can watch them, which is extremely valuable of a teaching in and of itself. You turn your attention away from the thoughts back into the conscious observer itself. The thoughts settle down on their own, just like the body will settle down on its own, because you're not even attending to it. In the deeper state of Samadhi, which we're going to talk more about tonight, your body and mind drop away from your awareness. It's not that you stop your heart from beating, you're just not even focused anywhere near your body to acknowledge your physical heart. You're so high up in your own consciousness, you're not even acknowledging your own mind anymore. However, the Yoga Sutras talks a lot about your mind, and there's a term called klishta and aklishta. So the word klishta refers to basically thoughts that are going to lead you into suffering, and aklishta thoughts are thoughts that lead you into the bliss of your own soul. You want to learn to get your mind to have aklishta thoughts like, be here now, relax, go within, you're immortal and eternal, focus on the immortal, eternal, blissful self. It's okay to have thoughts, yet the thoughts can be trained to guide you into the deeper meditative states or the deeper states of Samadhi. So here, this is saying in the second verse of the sutras, yogas chit vritti nirodha. Yoga, the state of yoga occurs when the chit. So here, this word chit could be C-I-T-T or C-H-I-T-T. It's not referring to the pure consciousness, which is C-H-I, which is C-I-T or chit. This chitta is, like in Course in Miracles, there is spirit, and then mind is the activating agent of spirit. So the activating agent, chit vrittis are mind stuff, waves in the mind. When you hear thoughts in your head, those are chit vrittis, right? So the state of yoga occurs when the chit vrittis are brought into the narod state. But even that isn't the best way to say it, because we don't actually bring the chit vrittis into the narod state. Yoga is like extracting your soul from your mind. So you're literally transcending. So if you imagine this mixed state, the yogis talk about a state called sanyog, where sanyog and viyog, where the consciousness and the mind are mixed, and you don't even know who you are. If I say, who are you? You'll give me your name, or you'll tell me your role in this world, or what your job is. How many people, when they're asked, who are you, say, I'm the immortal, blissful, divine consciousness? You might not even say it if you know it, but the point is, do you know it? Or are you so mixed in the human that you actually think you're a human being? Yoga extracts you from that so you can pull back and be the observer. So Narod is not about the mind, actually. Narod is about the soul or the consciousness. We could call that Atma, the soul, or Jivatma, the individualized soul, the sense of self that you are, right? Because you're in there. You hear my words, you're listening. I'm not talking to your mind, actually. I'm talking to you, the consciousness. So when you close your eyes and you're conscious, yoga is all about that consciousness. You don't stop your mind, you just put your attention so deep into your consciousness that you're above your mind. In Zen practice, quite often the beginning practitioners focusing, or very advanced practitioner, will focus below the navel. So down in your body. Why would we do that instead of up and out? Well, actually a lot of reasons, but in this context of this, one is you can get your mind quiet by going below your mind. The thing is, your mind exists, right? And it's an organ. There's nothing wrong with it. It's actually super important in all these philosophies that we have a thing called mind. But don't be in it, fighting with it and trying to stop it. Yogis simply teach to transcend it, to go into the narod state where your mind essentially just drops away. So we'll go into that a lot more in the full day workshop with a lot of meditations to guide you into the narod state. But without practice, without real spiritual discipline, it's just a theory. Because if you close your eyes, you try to meditate, and all you got is just thoughts all over, you're drowning in the pond, and it takes years, literally, to pull yourself out of the pond. And again, don't say, it takes years, so I'm not going to do it. Once you realize you're in some kind of level of suffering, you're caught up in the human, you're not, or, all right, you're not suffering, but are you experiencing consistent bliss, like every day? Can you just close your eyes? Like, this is my personal home office, that recliner I'll spend 2 or 3 hours a day in. There's a meditation cushion on this side, and then there's a massage table. I am a trance junkie. I'll spend at least 6 hours a day in some meditative altered state. Why? Because it's so blissful and so healing. The healing force of this yogic state of samadhi is profound for the body, the mind, the heart, the emotions. All right, so again, just an intro to these ideas. Next, maybe some more fancy pictures, but anyway, this is a picture relating to the word in Sanskrit, vivek. Now, what is vivek? And then we're going to do a little exercise with some screen share. So vivek is a word related to a term vivekyati, but the word can be translated, I'll give you the not good translation first, discrimination. Why do we not like the word discrimination? Because it's not a good politically correct term. So perhaps the best English word for vivek is discernment. Vivekyati refers to discerning wisdom. I teach this in our school. I teach this on onlinemonastery.com. So some of you may know the teachings here that I'm going to go into, but I do this with my clients when I teach them meditation or this type of meditation. So it's a review for those of you who are graduates who know these teachings to be able to embrace a very powerful idea that will help anybody to grasp these things better. So give me a moment. I'm new to this system we're using tonight, and okay, so I think if I just go here, okay, you should be seeing my screen. I'm just going to assume you do. If not, this part of the recording we will edit out. So right here we have a line, and basically it just represents that which is below, and that which is above the line. Above the line is going to represent whatever is truth. So anything that's true is what's above the line. Therefore, what's below the line we'll consider illusion. Above the line, we're going to acknowledge truth would have to be unchanging, right? It always has to be there. If it's not the truth tomorrow, then it's just not the truth. So below the line, therefore, things that are changing. And the yogis acknowledge anything changing is unreal, right? Because true and real are synonymous terms. So below the line is unreal. And the essential prayer of a yogi is, lead me from illusion to truth. Lead me from the unreal to the real. But we can break this down a lot to what's below the line. Below the line is the world of form. Up here is that which is formless. Below the line is that which is subject to birth and death. And not really, things just come up and go down like waves. Aren't born and they don't die, but they're changing. They exist and they don't exist. Those atoms are in constant states of flux. But above this is that which is immortal, that never dies. It doesn't know about such things. It's eternal, and it's forever free. It's never touched or hurt or bound by anything in these lower realms. So below this line is your body, are your emotions, and not sure how to make columns in this, so let's just make that a little smaller for you. I don't want to put too much more text here, just give you the idea. So even your own mind is below the line. Why? Because your mind is changing. Your mind is always talking. And again, we can't be in the mind to try to stop it. The yogis teach just move up here into this higher space. To understand that a little bit more, we could put the word down here, object of consciousness. It's probably spelled wrong, but for the sake of time, let's keep moving on. So object of consciousness. What is an object of consciousness? If you look at this on a computer screen, your computer screen is an object of your consciousness. My voice is an object of your consciousness. Above the line is the subject and a subject-object relationship. So let me get that word there for you and then spell it properly. Okay, subject-object relationship. So you're the subject, what you observe is the object, but we're also focused on what we're observing, that we forget to focus on the observer. So in a sentence, we have a subject-object idea, right? I am observing a chair. But the question is, am I the chair? So this teaching, it takes a couple hours to go through, and we'll be doing it in the workshop, but the idea is to be able to put your attention on what's above the line and to let go of what's below the line. So we have two jewels of yogic practice. One is called vivek, which we're talking about now, to discern the real from the unreal, truth from illusion. The other is called vairagya, which could be translated as letting go. It's a great term in yoga, just let it go. But what are we letting go of? Everything that moves, everything that vibrates, everything that changes. And for those of you who study forgiveness work, Viragya is like forgiveness, just let it go. But it has to be transformed and released. And the yogis have a whole model of psychology about what's happening in the mind that keeps us bound. All right, because that's not the best imagery. Let's go there. And give me just a sec. Go ahead. I've got a helper who's giving me a message. The screen is small. You are big. Okay, thanks. Got it. All right, that should bring us back to where we want to be. Good, right, helper? No, do I have to just stop sharing? Excuse me, everybody. Give us 1 sec to be sure we're working. Still smaller than me. Okay, let's go back to this for a moment. All right, I know what I see, so I'm going to keep moving ahead. Maybe it'll change as we move along. All right, so here's the word vivek in Sanskrit, essentially relating to discerning the real from the unreal or truth from illusion. Let's go to the next slide, and maybe that'll look better. So here we're looking at the word samadhi in Sanskrit. So what do we mean by samadhi? Samadhi could be translated as oneness, but again, we really don't have very good English words for this. The idea, though, is that as you're going into deep meditation, you're moving from the external to the internal. You're moving from the unreal to the real. It's a movement from the more gross or dense layers of reality, more and more into the subtle layers. Now, if you've ever read a book by Paramahansa Yogananda called Autobiography of a Yogi, you hear all about this word samadhi, and it's made to, in our states that are truly glorious. And Yogananda's first experience of samadhi, which he wrote a poem on, absolutely makes you feel like, wow, I'm never going to attain this. But the more I studied samadhi, it comes in stages that we could all practice and we could all develop and go deeper into. So in the workshop and in our school and on onlinemonastery.com, but specifically in this workshop, we'll dive very deep into understanding these stages. There's 2 major distinctions in the stages of samadhi. The first, which relates very much to hypnotherapy and to neurolinguistic programming, we have something called savikalp, and then there's nirvikalp. Savikalp is with imagination. When you're doing guided imagery, like I did to get us started, right? You're in the mountains, you're on the beach, see a picture of yourself. When we ask clients, I want you to visualize a picture of yourself. What are you asking them to do? You're saying visualize a picture of your body, right? See yourself in situations. See yourself losing weight. Yourself doesn't need to lose weight. Yourself is so subtle, it doesn't have form. So when we tell our clients to visualize that they're losing weight, or see yourself as a non-smoker, or whatever else we do, see yourself really successful and happy, that self is actually a false self. Is it useful in the manifest world? Yeah, it's better than a low self-esteem image, right? You should be visualizing your human self at the highest level you can, but yogis go so far beyond that, they don't need to do that, because what you're not visualizing yourself at all. What happens in yoga practice, we're going through the states called savikalp, but we're letting go even of our imagery. We're saying, okay, who are you? You're not your chair, you're not your computer screen, you're not your shoe, you're not your big toe, you're not your leg, you're not your other leg, you're not your hips and buttocks, you're not your torso, you're not your arm, you're not your leg, right? If we remove your hand, you're still there. You're not these body parts, and you're not all the body parts put together. Well then, so who are you? Well, then we have to take the journey inwards, because you're nothing outside of your skin, and you're not your skin, right? But you're not your bones, you're not your bone marrow. So who are you? That's the main thing about yoga practice. Samadhi is an experiential movement into that you. It's deeper than the emotional level at your heart, right? Because you could observe your heart. Your heart would be in the realm of vikalp. There's waves of emotion or thoughts, or your physical heart beating, or your heart chakra doing what it does. None of that is the goal of yoga practice. We need to go deeper than those subtleties. Now, on the inner journey to the self, the deeper states of samadhi, we learn eventually in the Yoga Sutras about a term called sanskar. The term is in our hypnotherapy training and definitely covered in onlinemonastery.com's teaching. Simply stated as sanskar So actually, if you went back to that image I was showing you of this above and below the line, above the line is you as soul, as spirit. But when we kind of fall, right, we drop down into the manifest world of form, we incarnate, if you will, right, we take on the human experience. When we're really in that, we forget who we are. We don't have a good sense anymore. Sanskar is the identification. It's called a mental impression. It's when I think or believe deep down inside that I am what I'm observing. So let's say a child gets hurt, right? Some traumatic event. The child would say, well, I am a body. I am an emotional person. I am sad. I am scared. I am lonely. I am unloved. I am unwanted. We call that a blockage. It becomes a memory with beliefs and emotions stored in the subconscious. And yogis are masterful at understanding the nature of sanskars, how they develop, and how to clear them, because sanskars are the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. But samadhi, deep meditation, is one way, not the only way. There are actually faster ways. Hypnotherapy being one of those, honestly. There are faster ways to remove sanskars, the blocks to the enlightened state. But being in the state of samadhi, while it wears away sanskars, doesn't totally clear them. And the sanskars are actually what cause our mental, emotional, and psychosomatic physical health problems. So by learning to heal the sanskars, the blockages in the mind, we can actually be profound healers for the mind, emotions, and the physical body itself. Yet samadhi is deeper than that in the word nirvikalp. Nir means not or without, like no. And then vikalp, or the word vikalp means imagination. So nirvikalp is without imagination. The deeper states of samadhi are nirvikalp. There's no imagination. And imagination here means anything that vibrates is in the realm of imagination. Your body is just an image in your mind's eye, right? Your memories are images in your mind's eye. Your intellect, your buddhi, is just an image in your mind's eye. So all of these, when I say mind's eye, I'm not being too technical there, right? But you have an anatomy, and that consists of your mind and your intellect and your memories and your emotions. And the yogis say none of that is you. None of that stuff is actually you. So nirvikalp is when we're in a state beyond all of that, those images, right? Even when I just say to you something like, imagine your heart. Whatever image comes up in your mind is not the enlightened state. It's just an image. Nirvikalp is when there are no more images. And the deepest thing that goes is the word ahankar, which is another word in Sanskrit, but there's a very deep teaching here about ego. So ahankara is your ego or your amness, your sense of self. And in the one of the deepest samadhi stages, there's going to be a sense of, all right, here I am, and here's the divine. I'm in the presence of absolute bliss consciousness. I am with that which is immortal and eternal and forever free. And there's a me and there's an it. The yogis teach even that subtle duality, which is just, I love my source. Even that little bit of, I love you, I love the divine, is still, I'm focusing the divine because it's so beautiful. Even that subtle duality drops away in nirvikalp samadhi. So they say in savikalp samadhi, you know yourself as the self. But in nirvikalp samadhi, you drown yourself in the self. You lose yourself in the self. So what is samadhi? Absolute bliss consciousness, oneness with your source. Does that happen just because you read the book? No. When you watch a few YouTube videos? No. It takes many, many years of practice. And the truth is there's no limit to that which is unlimited. So there's no limit to samadhi. So even though you know how to tap into it, you don't need to do all the discipline to get there. You just go into it every day. Like, why do I spend 6 hours a day in this state? Because it's wonderful, right? And, if you think about the idea of moksha or liberation from the wheel of karma, the cycle of birth and death, continual suffering, the yogis teach the way out of that is samadhi. You put your attention on the absolute highest, and then at the time of bodily death, or when you leave your body for the last time, they call that Maha Samadhi, meaning the great Samadhi, the great liberation. So this is literally, according to the yogis, a path of liberation, not just enlightenment to know who you are, to get you free of those cycles of birth and death and suffering. So those of you into past life regression, how many more lifetimes you're going to do, right? Those of you who are into the life between life thing, because you're going to plan your next incarnation, that's cool. You can come back here if you want to. But yogis really aren't all that concerned with that. They're concerned with knowing who they truly are. Now, there is the idea of coming back to be of service, which is beautiful. But the point is, you need to achieve the highest first to be able to make a decision from that highest space, or just to be guided from that highest space. But even the words we're using now, incarnation and time and space and coming back, in Samadhi, none of that exists. So what is liberation is to really realize you exist in a space right now which is beyond time and space. It's not like you have to leave your body to go somewhere. It's not like there's a soul who leaves a body in yoga. We talk about that, but really Samadhi is more of this inner absorption. It's like the outside world is this facade that you push your face in, and yoga is saying, get back, go back deeper, 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 deeper. And then you're so deep, the external world drops away, and now you're in your inner world. Now, there can be a lot of light and sound and imagery, and again, there's powers we can talk about briefly tonight. But beyond all of that is the sweet, blissful, immortal, eternal self. And it's more than good enough in itself. But it doesn't negate action. It doesn't say we shouldn't live in the world. It doesn't say that thoughts don't move. You'll still notice as a practicing yogi who's gone very deep, your body still exists. Your emotions still exist. They don't die or cease to exist when you achieve these states. You just don't have a problem with it anymore because you're not touched by it. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says the soul cannot be cut or burned or wet or withered. You're always pure. You're always guiltless. You're always eternal. You're always, what's the Course in Miracles? The Son of God is innocent and guiltless. So that's it. You are innocent and guiltless forever. So that's why forgiveness is so important. Let everything else go that holds you and binds you to the world. Plunge into the bliss of your own soul. And that essentially is what liberation in this model is all about. The other word that I'll allude to briefly is a term called Kaivalya. That's what we see there on the screen, or Kaivalya Avastha. This is the enlightened state, but it's not just when you're practicing Samadhi, it's when you're living Samadhi. So what does that mean essentially? Self alone is the realization that you are the whole, that the energy, which is called Prakriti or Chi or Prana or Shakti, a lot of you have heard these terms, life force energy, universal life force energy, Reiki, that energy pervades the whole universe. In Sanskrit, Purush is the source of that. So Purush is your own consciousness. You are the source of all of the energy manifesting itself, which means you're all of it. You're the source, you're the energy, you're everything. Every tree is you, every branch is you, everything is you. Everyone, the homeless person, the children, the men, the women you see, it's all you. The saints who've gone this far feel so one with all of that they're moved to compassionate service because they sense the suffering is still there for those who don't know, right? And the word don't know is a Sanskrit word for avidya, meaning not knowledge or ignorance. When you're ignorant of who you really are, we don't tell our clients or our friends, hey, you're ignorant. But the word avidya means you don't know. Now, it's not our job, just in case you're new at this, to try to convince everybody they don't know. In Zen, when I lived in Zen monastery, they just said, mind your own practice, right? Just get on your meditation cushion, go deep within, find the realized state of mind, Kaivalya Avastha. So it's by practicing Samadhi meditation that we live in that enlightened state of awareness. Now, the teaching of Purush and Prakriti, Purush being the soul, Prakriti being the energy of the universe, soul or spirit, let me say it the other way, Prakriti, the energy of the universe, is in service of you, the Purush. So another way to say that in simple English is all the energy of the universe is under your control, right? The yogis teach why you're so incredibly powerful in the deep meditative states, because you are sitting literally at the source of all creation. Everything that would move and change, the word in Sanskrit is parinam, when the energy, the subatomic particles called anu and para-anu in Sanskrit, when those subatomic particles start doing what they do and manifesting into form, You're the one doing that. You're not a victim to it. You are literally manifesting universes as the one universal self. But as your own sense of self, Jivatma, the individualized essence, you can create a very powerful life for yourself, a very beautiful life for yourself. Do I have a slide? I don't have a slide for the Vibhuti or the siddhis, the yogic powers. So let's just talk about them briefly. When you're practicing the 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, which I'll teach in our, let's just go here to let you guys know about that again. Hopefully the video is coming through well here. Me in the bottom left and the big screen with the slide. So the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali workshop will go deep into these teachings of Ashtanga Yoga, the 8 limbs of yogic practice. The 8 limbs consist, I'll just review them briefly, of yam and niyam, which are basically rules and injunctions for how to live a healthy life. Usually if you go to an ashram, your first teachings are spiritual lifestyle teachings. Don't lie, don't steal, don't kill, keep your body clean, eat healthy, monitor your sexual energy, don't misuse your sexuality. It's some basic laws that especially people during times when we were not as hygienic, like yogis are very hygienic. You want to feel incredibly sattvic is the word, incredibly pure. So you eat pure food, you keep your colon healthy, you're, like everything is just clean, and like cleanliness is next to godliness. It's a very yogic idea. Once we go beyond those, then we go into what's called asana, which are the body postures, right? All the stretches, and you find that in Hatha Yoga with the breathing techniques. However, the only asana that really matters is what's called Padmasana, which is lotus pose. The ability to just sit still in meditation for long periods of time without falling asleep. Some of you may know the yogic term Yoga Nidra, which is called yogic sleep. It's similar to like that hypnotic state. It's not Samadhi. So Yoga Nidra or deep hypnosis, they're kind of similar, not exactly, but those states of being are not Samadhi. Samadhi is not semi-consciousness, it's super consciousness. And the truth is, in hypnosis, you're more aware rather than less aware. But what happens after we sit in meditation for a while in a seat, we move into the next limb of yogic practice called pranayama. Here we start to regulate our breath, and now there are breathing techniques that come out of this, but really you want to get to a state called the breathless state. The pranayama for that is kumbhak, and you can practice just holding your breath, but you can't do that for long. What happens in profound yogic practice is your body becomes a superconductor for divine energy because there's no resistance inside. You burn through your blockages, light and love move through your chakra system, your kundalini is open and flowing, and your insides are feeling amazing, and therefore you barely have to breathe. That's the higher level of pranayama. Beyond that, we start to go into what's called pratyahara. We did a little bit of it today, where I asked you to pull away from your senses, away from your ears, your eyes, your nose, your tongue, and your sense of touch. Yogis learn to withdraw from the senses, and then where do you go, right? If you're withdrawing from the outside, then you need to know the latter stages. Those are called dharana, concentration, simply stated, intense concentration, dhyan, deep, deep meditation, and then samadhi, which I've explained. When you have the combination of dharana, dhyan, samadhi, so deep concentration, deep meditation, and a deep state of oneness, you develop something called sanyam. Again, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. The latter 3 stages of this are called sanyam when they're kind of combined together. Sanyam is the power that gives you all those incredible powers of chapter 3 in the Yoga Sutras. So what are some of those powers? Simply stated, sanyam is the ability to put your intense meditative concentrated focus on anything and to know that thing extremely well. So the yogis say if you go into your heart, you'll know the nature of your mind and your emotions because you're meditating on it, essentially. If you put your attention down in your body, like on your navel, you can know what makes up your body. It's about a deep insight. That same sanyam power can be as small as an atom or as big as the universe. So yogis can literally experience the most subtle subatomic particles, essentially. I know a scientist might have an issue with that, but this is what the yogis are saying. And, these are yogic powers. So, scientists get over it because yogis have experienced this stuff and they write it down. So we can't necessarily prove this, but you can do it here. Do it right now for yourself. Just take your awareness. I have this little hangnail thingy here. I can put all my attention right on that little hangnail thing and make that the whole center of my universe. What I've essentially done there with my Sanyam power is I focused on something very small. Now expand your consciousness big to be aware of the whole room around you. Just let your peripheral vision expand and think about the walls, the floor, the ceiling, but don't think about them. Put your attention on them. You've just made your consciousness big. That's you. You're the consciousness. You can be as small as an atom or as big as the universe. The implications of that, when you're out of your body, in an out-of-body experience, you can experience what the yogis call Virat Swarup, or the vision of the cosmic self. It's what Yogananda wrote about in Autobiography of a Yogi. It's what Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita experienced when he said, Krishna, show me who you really are. Like, God, show me who you really are. And then Arjuna had a vision of essentially the cosmos. And it freaked him out because it's big, right? We're not used to such grandeur, but yogis talk about being able to have that experience. Now, what's the real practical benefit of Sanyam as far as a power? When you're with a client as a hypnotherapist, if you've developed Sanyam power, you put that on your client, and they don't have to be in the same room with you, by the way. My book, The Sutras on Healing and Enlightenment, has a chapter called Long Distance Healing and the Taking On of Karma. And essentially, you're doing that, it's advanced techniques, but you're doing that by putting your attention on someone who's not physically in your location, right? So we talk about a non-local universe, that minds are joined, that time and space are an illusion. But when your client's in your office or on Zoom, you put your Sanyam power on them, and you will know what they're feeling in their body before they even tell you. You'll know their beliefs and emotions and essentially the generalities of their story before they even tell you. Why is that so valuable? Because you'll know that you know them, which is what these powers are all about. And the knowledge that yogis have about the universe, essentially, and mind and people is because of the Sanyam power. So that's where the siddhis develop from. But the yogic powers really is that Sanyam power, which again is intense, meditative concentration or focus. It's a simple way to understand it, to explain it, but years of practice to move into that. Okay, so that's a bit about that. Let me just take one moment to be sure we covered everything we said we would tonight, and then I'll take us on a little meditation. Then we can open the chat pod to Q&A if you guys would like. So just a quick review. So yeah, we talked about Vivek, Samadhi, and Kaivalya. The siddhis or yogic powers briefly, and how you can learn more is at the very final slide. Again, Yoga Sutras workshop coming up on April the 30th. With that said, let's go on to meditation, and then we will wrap it up with some Q&A time. So feel free, as my teacher, Swami Shaman India would say, close the eyes. So feel free to close the eyes. And once again, just breathe. In Zen, they say, if the first thought begins with delusion, all subsequent thoughts do. But if the first thought begins with enlightenment, all subsequent thoughts do. So let's make a choice as we begin a meditation process now to focus on the real, to let go of the unreal, to focus on absolute, unchanging truth, not illusion. To focus on your very own self and to let go of that which you are not. To do that, listen to the sound of my voice. Make that the most important thing in the world right now. In hypnosis, we start with an object of fixation. Make my voice the only thing that matters. Let everything else go. Now, as you're listening to my voice, ask yourself, are you this voice? Or is it something that you hear? Notice how the voice is an object of your consciousness. Notice how your sense organ, the ear, is vibrating this voice. Yet you're the final recipient of the sound coming in. There's the consciousness, the knower. Right? Consciousness is the knower. Then there's the ear. Then there's the voice. Which one are you? You're the knower. Now, with your eyes closed, just sense the room around you. Ask yourself, am I the floor? Am I the walls? Am I the ceiling? And the yogis use the formula neti neti. Not this, not that. Are you the floor? No. Are you the walls? No. Are you the ceiling? No. How do you know? If we removed the walls and floor and ceiling, you'll still be here. You might be cold or rained on, but you're still here. You're not the room that you're sitting in. The room is in a constant state of change. So you can observe the change, but the true you is not changing. So you affirm in your mind, I'm not the room. I'm not the carpet. I'm not the computer. I'm not the chair, which leads you closer to your own body. Ask yourself, are you your clothing? Am I my pants or the sweater or my socks or shoes? No. How do I know I'm not my socks? Focus on your feet right now. Notice how you could put your concentrated power on your feet. There's a you, and then there's your feet. If we remove your feet, life would be uncomfortable, but you would still be here. So you affirm in your mind, I'm not my feet. Go ahead and wiggle your toes right now. Just move your foot. Circle your ankle a little. Now do your other foot. Now let it stop. Notice how you are the one who initiated the movement. Your feet didn't move themselves. There's a you that used your willpower to make your feet move. There's a you, and then there's an it. I and it. Yogis help you to discern the difference between I and it. Now, focus on your legs. Ask yourself, am I my legs? The answer is no. I'm not my left leg. I'm not my right leg. You know, because if you removed your legs, you'd still be here. You wouldn't be any less. It's a good weight loss technique, but you wouldn't be any less. So keep your legs, but let them go for now and move on to your arms and your torso and apply the same logic. Am I my arms and torso? No. Am I my left kidney? No, you could live with one kidney, right? You could be conscious with only one kidney. You could remove part of your liver right now and it would grow back. You'd be just sitting here observing that. So observe your body and affirm in your mind, I am not my body. Make it very real. Experience it for yourself. Confirm it for yourself. I am observing my body. Now observe the sensations in your body. Notice if it's hot or cold. Any pleasure or discomfort. Thirst or hunger or satiated. Just observe. And ask yourself, am I the sensations in the body? No, I'm not this hunger. I'm not this thirst. I'm not this warmth. I'm not this coolness. I'm the observer. Keep finding the present moment and that you're in there observing. Now observe your breath. Breathe in. Breathe out. Notice. Experience that. The diaphragm pulls down. The lungs fill with air. Notice how as you exhale, the air will be just a little bit warmer. We inhale. Sense the breath move in the nose. A little cooler. Exhale. Just a tiny bit warmer. But ask yourself, am I the breath? Am I oxygen and carbon dioxide and all that stuff? No. I'm not the air around me. I'm not my diaphragm. I'm not my lungs. Now, go to your emotions, usually associated with your heart. Ask yourself, am I my emotions? Am I sadness, hurt, fear, anger, guilt? No. Most of those emotions aren't even here right now. But you're here right now. An emotion rises in your awareness, but it's not you. And even the happy emotions, the excited emotions, the ones that seem positive. You're not a positive or negative emotion. Again, keep finding the you who's there, even when your emotions are not there. We're going from the more dense to the more subtle. Now, go to your own mind. Become aware of your thoughts. Start to watch your own thinking. Welcome in your intellect for a moment. Yogis call this part of mind buddhi. Intellect, reason. Let your mind right now say 2 + 2 = 4. And hear that in your mind. Do it again, internally. 2 + 2 = 4. That's your intellect. Yet you're not your intellect. So affirm, I'm not the intellect. Let your mind say 2 + 2 = 5. It doesn't matter if your mind is right or wrong. You're not your mind. Now welcome in your memories. Think about what you had for breakfast or lunch or dinner. Just welcome in an image of the food that was on your plate. Ask yourself, are you your memories? Am I a memory? I'm not that salad, and I am not that broccoli. Right? I observe food, and I observe my memories of food. Again, becoming more subtle. Now let your mind do this interesting trick. Just let your thoughts say, do you hear me? Do you hear me? And then let your mind say, don't think that you're me. You could observe those thoughts. Now let your mind start repeating numbers. Just go 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are called chitvrittis, waves of consciousness. Watch as the number arises out of silence and returns to silence. 7. Silence. 8. Silence. Observe the space between the numbers. Put a little bit more space in between each number. 9. 10. Now you can speed up your mind, count those numbers really fast, slow them down again. Most importantly, remember, if it changes, it's not you. If you can control it, it's not you. If you could observe it, it's not you. And if you exist, when it's gone, it's not you. So now let's focus on you. Simply let my words guide you into the peace of your own soul. You'll move into the Nirod state, transcending your mind by focusing on the self. It's easy to find the self higher up in your head. Go to the space above your 2 physical eyes, internally, as if you're like a balloon that was held down somewhere in your heart, but we untether the balloon and it floats up. It floats up through the throat, floats up into the head, and then in to the inside, behind your eyes, between and above your ears, as if you're rising up into the crown of your head internally, not above your head, floating above your body, not there. Go internal into your own awareness. The Hindus say, Tat Tvam Asi, thou art that. And so the deepest meditative state is to meditate on pure consciousness itself. When you get caught up in your mind, just let it go and go back up to the conscious observer. When you notice you're in your mind, go back to pure consciousness. Find your center, not to the left or to the right, as center as you could be. Find the present moment, not the past or the future, which is only in your mind. Samadhi is always here and now. It's inwards, not outward. If it helps, think of it as moving up, above your mind. Narrow the field of your attention into what the yogis call ekagrata, extreme one-pointedness. Hold your attention on this idea beyond ideas of consciousness, focusing on consciousness. I am is observing I am. Asmita Samadhi, amness. I am. And as we move more into that, we'll actually experience the state arising before it, a non-samadhi, bliss. Just keep focusing on the inner silence, the inner peace. No guided imagery, no use of intellect. Don't use your mind to create anything. Go to that which always exists. It's always at peace. It's eternal, it's always there. It's immortal, it never dies. You have no problems in samadhi. Nothing to fix, nothing to heal. You're perfect, whole, and complete. Just return to the wholeness. Find the divine perfection of your own consciousness. Sat, pure existence. Chit, pure consciousness. And Anand, pure bliss. As you keep moving deeper and deeper into that, it becomes easier and easier because there's nothing to accomplish. You don't have to attain anything. Notice how you already are that which you may have been seeking. Now there are techniques of what to do with your mind to help to assist this, but this is the essence of the practice. Find your consciousness and keep going there. It's a bit more advanced. There are stages that can help you to go into this. And again, it's a lifetime of practice. But let's take the time now, before I wrap up the meditation, just to remember who you truly are. You're not a name. You're not a body. Self-esteem doesn't mean anything to you. You're perfect just as you are. You're not your past, you're not your memories, you're not your body. And now you just practice focusing on who and what you really are. Peaceful, blissful. And in that space, you're one with the divine wisdom. You can commune with Source here. If you want to use words like God, you can talk to God, communion in this state. Or the Holy Spirit, the divine mind, the voice for God, or what the yogis call Ishvar, the personal sense of the divine. Your oneness with divine mind and divine guidance and divine wisdom is in this space. I'll give you just a moment in silence and just place your attention there effortlessly and easily, knowing you don't need my voice to keep you in that state. All right, so I'm going to shift towards coming out of that. I won't do an abrupt snap like I did earlier, but start to just breathe below your navel. Drop your attention back to your body again. Notice how much more relaxed your body is when you just forgot about it for a while. Deep samadhi regulates your autonomic nervous system. Your heart will beat slower. You'll breathe less. Your skin gets more clear. You eat less food because you care about the energy in your body moving freely more than you do about being heavy and full. So bring lightness to your body. offer clarity and a decision to eat healthier and to stretch more, do the body postures, do the yogic stretching, practice yogic breathing. It's a very healthy way to live. It's a very beautiful way to live. As you come back to your heart right here now, very slowly, in a moment, let's do it very slow. You'll be slowly opening your eyes. One little sliver at a time, a tiny crack, and just look through your very slowly opening eyelids. When they're half open, notice that you're in there. There's a you peering through your little eye holes. And as your eyes open and you bring your attention back to the screen or wherever you're at right now, you're the consciousness who's observing through those eyes and hearing through those ears. So you learn to pull back and to sit in that seat all the time, at least while you're still doing that practice at that stage of things. The idea of witness consciousness lets us, anytime, because we're sitting here, turn and plunge back into source, or we sit here and we can observe the human. Because you're not caught up in the human anymore, an emotion comes up and you're like, oh, the human's sad. No big deal. Sadness passes. You don't touch it. You don't hold it inside. You don't have to do anything about it. It'll pass. Everything passes. You're afraid? Oh, that seems kind of scary. Observe it. It'll pass. The problem humans have is they suppress all that stuff. They push it down. Who's pushing down all the negative emotions? You. The you who has willpower. Your consciousness uses the power of will to suppress emotions. Yogis learn, pull back and stop doing that. Don't suppress anything ever again. You'll go through a major spiritual cleansing and awakening process. It takes years. It's not for the faint of heart. But if you learn to truly open your heart and to breathe and allow that stuff to flow, it's a whole nother set of teachings on how to clear your emotional blocks. But it's completely there in our school. And in the hypnotherapy part of our training, we focus on techniques to help you to clear these blockages. Because yogis have like two major points of focus: clearing the blocks and getting established in the soul. And if you don't actually clear the blocks, which is not usually the major emphasis of yogic teachings, like what I found in India, they weren't as concerned with removing sanskars. They're more concerned with getting you into Samadhi. Great. But if you don't clear the blocks in the subconscious, like I said earlier, you can still have a lot of normal human problems. So by doing hypnotherapy, taking the plunge into what we call the subconscious, we can clear the sanskars, which are clearly talked about in the Yoga Sutras. What you're working to get to, according to the Yoga Sutras, in closing here, is a state called sanskar shesh. Sanskar shesh is the absence of sanskars. No more. There are no more blockages. Everything is simply clear. When you're in that state of pure sanskar shesh, then your mind is clear, your heart is clear, everything is open. It's a beautiful way to live. I can open up to question answer. I'm not sure if we'll keep recording for that, but we'll stay live anyway for at least a few moments. So feel free to post questions now in the comments field of the live stream, and I'll work to interact with you guys. Happy to talk to you about that. Next week, we'll be here again. We'll be doing it every Monday night. If you've signed up, you'll be getting email reminders, and sign up for our school's newsletter as well if you haven't at instituteofhypnotherapy.com. And then next week, we'll be talking about combining hypnotherapy and neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. I'm a master NLP practitioner and teacher. I do teach NLP through the school. We have our next NLP training happening in June, and then a master training happening in September. So thank you, everybody who's been here. Just checking if there's any questions before I might wrap it up. This is a different system. We're not as interactive because of the way we're streaming on social media, but this is certainly a time to connect. All right. So I don't see anything right now, so I'm going to stop. This is a recording. I wish everybody a wonderful evening. Oh, there we go. All right, hang in. Hang out a sec. All right, here's a question before we go. If we are pure consciousness and awareness, why do we have to live in density and experience these lower levels of consciousness? What are your thoughts on this? Sure. Well, one answer is you don't have to, and you're actually not here. You're not actually in it. It's kind of like the Matrix, right? If you think about Neo, he thought he was actually, because imagine your question, while you're in the Matrix, caught up as Neo was before he was awake, if he said, why do I have to be here? Morpheus would say, you're not actually there. So you don't have to be here. What happens in yogic philosophy is we have two words. We have the word vritti, right? Those are your thoughts, simply stated. We have what's called vritti, which is externally oriented consciousness. And then we have vritti, which we talked about narod a little bit, the internal movement back in. You're here, which means you're putting your attention on the human experience of name and form and time and space and pizza and beer and sex, like, all the things that are here, pleasurable and unpleasurable. Why we quote here? Because we value it, because we're putting our attention on it. There's stages in Samadhi and stages as you're going in the path where you want to withdraw from it, where you're like, nothing outside me makes me happy, right? I've been to all the different countries. I had lots of relationships. I've done all these things. I've been there, done that. Eventually, when you say I've been there, done that, you start meditating. You spend hours going inside of yourself. So you don't have to be here, but if we don't practice vritti, then we're not actually practicing pulling away from here. So yoga is really, in the deeper teachings, it's all about putting your attention somewhere else. The illusion that you drop down into a body and that you're going to keep dropping down into bodies is actually an illusion. It's part of the time-space story. I'm not saying reincarnation doesn't exist. I'm saying it's part of the illusionary realm of time and space in and of itself. The idea that you keep dropping into body after body is really not the issue. The issue is if you keep putting your attention on this world and you desire the things of this world, you'll just keep coming back to this world. So it's not about salvation after death. For yogis, it's about salvation now. If I don't want to be here anymore, what does that mean? I don't have to do as much on the outside. The great Saint Paramahansa Ramakrishna, when referring to using the G word, God, he said, if you really want God, then you start focusing on God, and God takes away your other responsibilities. So my experience in life and working with life mastery and financial freedom, you should be able to have many hours a day. I used to meditate 12 hours a day. Now I do about 6 hours a day. But that much time comes because you value the inside, and the external wasted time just drops away. You're not so busy anymore out there. You're like, I don't need to go to the movies. I don't need to go. It's not that we don't do external things, right? There's nothing wrong with the world. So it's not that you're here and you have to be here. It's that if you value the things of the world, if you vritti, you'll take your focus outwards and you'll focus on it. If you value spirit, you start turning the attention inwards. And I would say it's probably the accurate yogic answer to the question. Thank you for asking. All right, excellent. So we're going to wrap it up for the evening, and we'll see everybody next week. If you'd like to join me again for Monday Night Conscious Community, we'll talk about combining NLP and hypnotherapy, and I wish everybody a wonderful evening. Thank you all. Have a good night.